I hate Minecraft combat.
What?
No, no, all right. I know that sounds bad.
Now, just hear me out. Minecraft PvP, at least on the Bedrock edition, is really just a matter of who clicks faster, not who's better. And I really wanted to change that. I had recently been playing a lot of Battlefront 2. Ready? Ready?
Yeah. Are they in range? No way.
Which doesn't have the most complex melee system with lightsaber fighting in the entire world, but it is, a really fun game for me to play at least. And I really liked how the melee system was incorporated in there, and I wanted to bring something like that, but to Minecraft. So that's what I set out to do. First things first is I had to create a basic stamina system. Nothing too complicated. It goes up when you do certain actions. Every time you do an action, there's a cooldown before the stamina actually starts to regen. And, nothing all too complicated there. Next up, I had to actually make custom attacks. And here's where I will admit I did cheat. This is not entirely 100% commands. You see, in Minecraft Bedrock Edition, there are a couple of ways to do click detection, such as having an invisible entity that you're checking if it gets killed or not. I've done a video on that before. There's a couple other methods of doing it, but in my opinion, they're not super duper great, especially for what I want the system to do, which is like close quarters PvP, as this would get kind of messed up in a close quarters situation. So I did use an add-on that allows me to detect clicking. Other than that, I will promise you the rest of this is entirely vanilla. So what I did is once I was able to detect the clicking, I simply made it so every time the player clicked, it would enter a combo situation. This means they would have a little animation and they would do damage to whatever is in front of them. Pretty simple. On top of this, it would drain a little bit of stamina, and if the player is up against a guarding other player, then it drains the guarding player's stamina. Now, what do I mean by guard? You see, if I just left the attack, then it's no better than the problem I first came in with. It's all about clicking faster. You see, I want there to be skill involved. I want there to be thought. I want there to be parrying and delaying each other's fights, using abilities, all these types of things. I want that all to be part of the system. And so that's what I did. Basically, I made it so that while you're sneaking, you're guarding. Now, while guarding, your stamina doesn't go down, but it can't recover while you're guarding. As soon as you stop guarding, there's a short cooldown before your stamina regens, just like any other action. On top of this, while guarding, you can attack. But if you attack, your guard comes down. This means that retaliating while a player is attacking you is actually going to perform a successful parry, preventing them from damaging you, but you still damage them. This did leave me with a few problems though, because right now, as you can see, you can chain parries super easily, which I'm not fully against, but it's way too easy. So I shortened the window for normal parries as well as for re-parrying somebody, but then I'm still left with this problem. Now, the best way to play is to just crouch around blocking and hope the other guy is dumb enough to attack first. So it's time I introduce the new aerial attack. On top of the normal abilities that you're going to have, each weapon is going to have a unique aerial attack. With sword, the aerial attack is quite unique because it does very low damage to an actual player, but it drains a ton of their stamina if it hits them when they're guarding. So if you're defending a kick attack, it's actually better to stand up and take the damage than it is to let it drain your guard. What that means is there's now some actual strategy. You want to stand up and try to take the kick, or maybe if you're the attacker, do you want to bait and jump in the air, but actually land before your attack, hoping the enemy puts down their guard and you get a cheap hit in? It's up to you, and now there's a lot more strategy and tech and skill that goes into it. It's not just a click fest, it actually takes some time and thought. Now, I had mentioned earlier that I want every weapon to feel unique and have its own place within this new system. So, let's look at the weapons.
You cannot afford my diamond sword.
There's not too much to say about the sword that hasn't been said already, as it's the first weapon I made and it's the one I used for all my testing, but let's look at what I actually designed for the sword. The idea for the sword was that it would be pretty good at everything without being exceptional at any one specific thing. The sword is pretty good at dealing damage, but it's not the best. It's pretty good at draining stamina with its aerial attack, but it's not the best. It has decent range, but it's not the best. Overall, it doesn't have any super exceptional features, but there's no area that it's lacking, so it's a pretty good beginner weapon as well as a jack of all trades. There's not much left to say about the sword that I haven't gone over already, so let's move on to the next weapon.
And my axe.
The axe is meant to be the heavy hitter of this whole lineup. The whole goal with the axe is to create like this heavy overhead attack that's going to deal a lot of damage, but it's going to be a shorter range and it's going to have a longer animation, meaning it's a little bit easier to parry and you're going to be a little more at danger of using it. But a successful hit with the axe is going to be very rewarding. Now, overall, the stats in terms of the main attack are fairly similar to the sword. It has a bit of a shorter range. It has a bit of a longer animation, so it's a little bit easier to parry, but it drains much more stamina and it does much more damage. These two things combined do make it formidable. If you can get some good parries off, you're going to be able to kill people pretty quickly with the axe. On top of that, you have a really strong ability with your aerial attack. The aerial attack is kind of unique in the sense that whenever you jump, it actually doesn't do the attack immediately like most other weapons. You actually jump in the air and attack to start this attack, which puts you in a long wind-up animation before slamming down. This kind of is where the skill element comes in, because this actually gives players a good amount of time to avoid or prepare for your attack. However, if this attack lands, it's going to deal a bunch of damage, potentially enough to one-hit kill somebody, and even if you block it, it's still going to drain a ton of your stamina. So you're much better trying to avoid this attack rather than actually deflect it or parrying it. So once again, you have this very difficult, because remember, it has a shorter range than other weapons do, but at the same time, if you land that hit, it's going to be incredibly rewarding. It's probably going to secure the fight for you. So the axe is kind of a high-risk, high-reward, heavy-hitting weapon, and that's the design, and I think it worked out well. Let's move on to the next weapon.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Now, the hoe is meant to be the opposite of the axe. Instead of being a heavy-hitting, close-range weapon, the hoe is designed to be fast-firing with a longer range. It has better range than the sword and the axe. It has better attack speed than the sword, but it deals less damage and it drains less guard stamina. Overall, this just kind of rounds out the base weapon stat of you can have the heavy weapon, the medium weapon, or the light weapon. So the hoe kind of fills in that little niche as far as the base stats go. But the hoe's most unique trait is its aerial attack. You see, unlike the axe and the sword, the aerial attack of the hoe deals no damage directly. Instead, it has a special status effect that goes through guard and actually applies bleed to whatever target, whether they're blocking or not. Now, a bleeding target is slower. They have some special particle effects to show that they're bleeding, drains stamina over time. Not only do they drain stamina over time, that also means that their cooldown for a player to start regenerating their stamina is longer. So if you hit a player with bleed and they try to run away from you, well, number one, they're going to be slowed from the bleed itself, but also they're not really going to have much chance to regenerate their stamina if they try and run away. So catching somebody with a bleed is a really good way to make sure you can finish them off at the end of the fight, or if they're just spamming guard, to slowly whittle down their guard and not give them any chance to repair it. On top of all this, if the bleeding player runs out of stamina, it's actually going to start cutting into their health, and it still has the cooldown to prevent them from regenerating stamina. So overall, the hoe makes for a pretty formidable weapon with a unique status effects. So let's move on to the next one.
As a child, I yearned for the mines.
The pickaxe is probably one of the most interesting weapons that I have made so far. Not for the reasons that you might expect. Stat-wise, it's actually below average. It has the same range as the sword and the same attack speed as the sword, but it actually has the same damage as the hoe. It's not bad at draining guard with its main attack, but overall, in terms of pure stats, it's just objectively weaker than every other option that I've shown so far. But it makes up for it in its aerial attack, which is probably one of the most unique and arguably one of the most fun. You see, while you're in the air and you attack with the pickaxe, instead of just staying where you are, you're going to full-on tackle and dive out in front of you and damage anything in front of you. Now, this attack doesn't do very much guard drain, so a guarding player is going to be able to mostly negate it. It's going to do a decent amount of damage. My original plan for the pickaxe was to make something like the chain hook that I had made in a previous tutorial. The problem was, I felt like all the other weapons kind of had sort of vanilla feeling attacks. They weren't like too magical or mystical. And I thought adding the chain hook to the pickaxe would just end up being a little too far out there. So I thought this kind of tackle dive felt just a little bit more in the theme of what the other weapons were. And it still accomplishes a lot of what I wanted to do, which is, you can use it to sneak up on somebody and start a fight with the dive. Or if someone tries to run away from you, maybe they're out of stamina or low on health, that's when you can dive after them and maybe knock them down. So the pickaxe ends up being a pretty unique weapon because of all this. But let's move on to the final one. The final weapon to our arsenal is the shovel. It has a little bit more damage than the pickaxe and a little bit less stamina drain than the pickaxe, but overall stat-wise it is generally a little bit worse than all the other options here. It does make up for it though in a pretty strong aerial ability. See, the shovel has the ability to do a ground slam. Now the ground slam is especially unique in the fact that it has an AoE all around it, and it bypasses guards, meaning that whether you're sneaking or not sneaking, this attack will damage you. It won't drain any stamina, but it will damage you no matter what. However, you can actually dodge this ability. Because it's a ground slam, if you're in the air when the ground slam lands, it actually isn't going to damage you at all or drain any of your stamina. This is really unique because it actually allows a different level of gameplay where players can trade off and not only fight differently with different weapons, but fight differently against different weapons. Overall, rounding off the arsenal to a pretty unique weapon system. With all these weapons added, we have a much more advanced and skillful combat system added to Minecraft. Now this does work in PvE as well, although it's primarily designed to make PvP much more interesting. Overall, I hope you guys enjoy, and if you guys really want to try this out for yourself, I suggest you stick around for part 2, where I go into how I made each different tier of weapons, such as gold versus iron versus stone, all have different and unique bonuses compared to one another, so you might actually want to choose a gold hoe instead of a diamond hoe, for example. On top of that, I'm going to be making all this into a realm. In this realm, there's going to be custom abilities, things you can level up, and all that stuff. So keep an eye out for part 2 if you're interested. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.